Nutnfancy's part 2 of the review of the excellent SR9 9mm handgun by Ruger. We left off talking about durability and reliability. I do think it will bear itself out as the years pass as an extremely reliable and durable gun. I could be wrong, and I've been wrong in the past, but all indications seem to point that way. And you know what? It really follows along the lines of the Glock. Polymer frame, slide, and it rides on steel rails on the interior. I'll show you those here in a sec. So that brings us to accuracy. How accurate is SR9? Well, judging from the 100 rounds I put down range in the clinic, I would say extremely accurate. I was extremely impressed with SR9. I think it is capable of 3-inch groups at 25 yards. All the reviews I've read on it bear that out as well. And it just seems extremely accurate. I'm going to call the accuracy when it goes up against the Glock 17, which is extremely accurate, I would say. I'm going to call it a draw. That's kind of shocking to some of you all, I think, but the SR9 is accurate. Additionally, the SR9 has an advantage over the Glock in that we have at least elevation capability in the rear sight with the factory sight, which you generally don't have in a fixed sight Glock 17, and that's the one they sell most of. Yes, I know Glock 17s and all models of Glock, not all, but most can come with an adjustable for elevation only rear sight from the factory. I think that the Glock elevation adjustable rear sight is hokey. I don't like it. It's made of plastic. It can catch and snag and snap off. If you want adjustable sights on the Glock, it's a very easy proposition to do. I'd probably go with MEPR lights. And I can show you those when I cover the accessories, common sense accessories for the Glock pistols. That's another video I'll make. Stay tuned. But it comes that way from the factory, the SR9. That's kind of cool. Now, we would have to drift the front sight probably. You know how my eyes, I'm left eye dominant and right-handed like you've seen in the desert, so I generally have to drift my sights to bring them on target. But slight advantage in the sight department for the SR9. Very slight because it's very easily remedied in the Glock. Accuracy, I'm going to call it draw. And that's just from my indications, my own shooting that I've observed. Now, will I change as years go by? Remember, my videos just capture my points of view when the video was made. I'm always subject to change. If I get more information, if my experience shows that perhaps my ideas were wrong, then I'll adapt my opinions and I'll change as the time goes on. But right now, that's where I'm sticking. Draw on the accuracy. That brings us to Nutnfancy's talking points, ergonomics. I talked earlier in part 1 about the thinness of the grip of the SR9. A lot of folks with maybe smaller hands will really like this. And also keep in mind, back to the firepower talking point, this thing has 17+1. That's a lot of firepower in a very thin grip. And a lot of folks will totally dig that. Now, my hands are on a little bit of the larger size, so how do I think about it? Well, I like it. I think it's comfortable. And you know what? It even gets better because with SR9, you have a reversible backstrap. And let me show you how that works. Take that magazine out. And if I'm handling it, I like to have that trigger pulled safety. Well, you can't engage it when it's not cocked. Anyways, this is how you reverse this backstrap. I'm going to use my Glock disassembly tool. You just push out a cross pin right here. Gosh, I hope there's not a part 3. Okay. And let's put this cross pin away so I do not lose it. Slide that out. There's actually an interior portion there too. And this is made of rubber. Simply rubber. And you can reverse that for either a flat presentation on the back of the hand grip or curved, depending on your preference. And then you just slide it back in. Let's go with a curve just to see how it is. Personally, I like the flat portion. I'm not going to put the cross pin in for time on the video. But that's the difference that you can do on the SR9. And it gives you a little bit of extra padding there in the rear. Like I said, I prefer the flat one, but Some folks will like that, and that's an option that you have. How do I feel about these interchangeable grips and stuff that you see on a lot of different pistol designs? It's really in vogue now. I think they're pretty much not needed. I think if you get the ergonomics down, I want to reverse this again. If you get the ergonomics down on a pistol design, like the SIG, and in my opinion, like the Glock, I don't think you need that. I really don't. But that's what they're doing. That's the current trend, and so be it. Ergos, let's talk about the ergonomics as far as the slide release goes. Very nice. Right where I'd want it to be. Very 1911-ish. The safety, albeit, like I said in part 1, not needed, but it's still there, and it's easy enough to use. We will have to change our grip slightly for it, but it's a lot better than the 92 Beretta that we have to come way up here and sweep it off the slide. I hate slide mounted safety levers. Just don't like them. So they went with a frame mounted, again, very 1911. Now you guys look at this and go, wow, those are really small. And yes, they are. That slide release lever is very small indeed. However, I find in use it's perfect. It's nice and angled. Look at the you can see it protrudes out the side, unlike a stock Glock magazine release, which is flush, stupidly flush. You can see the user on this one upgraded to a Glock 34 lever, which I think is a very common sense modification. I think all Glocks should have that. Gives them a little bit extra leverage so you can sweep it off. But the SR9 I think is excellent. I really don't have any criticisms on it. The safety release, right where I would expect it to be, 1911-ish, nice. Sticks out enough so it's not close to the frame. Easy enough to find. It's ambidextrous for you lefties out there. And yes, you have the safety lever's ambidextrous too. And they did a really good job on not making it really thick. Look at my review on the P95, also the H&K USP Compact, and they did a real dumb job on both of those guns where they made very thick and protruding both safety levers and slide release levers. As a gun designer, we should keep the thinness of our slide to a minimum, or maximize the thinness, really keep the thickness to a minimum. There's probably no other more important dimension, in my opinion, for a concealable firearm than thickness. A thin gun will conceal really nicely. And let's compare it while we're talking about it against a Glock. And what do you know? It is indeed slightly thinner than the Glock. Not much. I don't have my calipers out, nor am I going to measure it. Just, it's a little bit thinner. How about that hand-to-bore axis? I noticed that when I was shooting it. It has really quick follow-up capability, this SR9 does, because look how low that bore sits in your hand. It's very H&K P7-ish. Look at my video on that. And that was the forerunner of that type of design, where they really strived to put the bore axis low in the web of your hand. What that does is it minimizes recoil as we're popping rounds. Pop, pop, pop. And so, a little sound effect for you. And that's cool. The Glock has that too. Maybe not quite as low, a little bit higher, but you can see the SR9, how low that slide buries in your hand. I really like that. That's a great feature. The trigger guard is nice, ergonomically speaking. It has no rubbing issues like some do. I won't mention names. H&K USP. Yeah, I hate that. Hate it when they put things inside the trigger guard. They should make it large and big enough for gloves. SR9, again, is such. Remember, we did the safety check on this gun, and it's just nice. That brings to the trigger. How is the trigger? I think it's a little bit on the stiff side, the SR9 is. It could be better, could be lighter. Let me clarify that. It could be lighter. I think the trigger as it is very crisp, has a very nice let off. I dig it. I love the SR9's trigger, except I would like it to be a little lighter. In comparison, again, to our standard, the Glock 17, the trigger is not quite as versatile. The Glock 17, all the Glock pistols, we can actually go inside the gun, take out our put in a 3.5 pound disconnector in there, and I've shown you that in other videos, and we can lighten this trigger pull up. That's a nice option to do. Can't do that with SR9, at least as of 2008. That may change as aftermarket things become more available. again, jumping ahead in the talking points. But the trigger on the SR9, very ergonomic, no rubbing issues. It breaks cleanly, resets relatively quickly. In my rapid fire test of this gun, I was pretty impressed. I wish they had not rounded this trigger guard. I do prefer, contrary to everybody else in the world, a squared off trigger guard, because I do put my index finger on there. I shoot well that way. No apologies, and I wish they would have squared this one off. I know it's in vogue not to do it. The owner of this gun already put some rubber traction material here because he shoots the same way. I think that's a great idea, by the way. Cheap modification, and it locks your finger on that trigger guard, whereas the slippery surface wouldn't do it at all. So, ergonomically speaking, I think the SR9 is an outstanding design. Between the Glock and the SR9, I'm going to call it a draw, because it just depends on what your preferences are. For my preferences, what do I prefer in hand as I hold them? And I know you guys are at, what do you like? I mean, which one do you want? Dudes, all I'm giving you is a data point. I am not the end-all expert. There's a lot of people that know a lot more about all this stuff than me, but I'll offer my opinion, and it's based on a lot of experience, a lot of shooting, but it is just that, it's my opinion. And if I had to shoot one or the other, the Glock 17, and this is a hard call for me, I would go with the Glock 17. Sorry, that's just how I feel. Because for me and my hand size, I really don't need or desire that thin of a grip. I would prefer, and do prefer, this thickness of a grip. It feels more natural to me. It makes it just feels better in my hand. Same, and I could say the same thing with a Glock 19, a Glock 23, a Glock 27. Yes, even with the abbreviated grip, and yes, even a Glock 21, 45. They're all very ergonomic. But that is, I'm going to give advantage Glock in terms of ergonomics, but it's going to be by a very slight margin, and it's based solely on my subjective analysis, because SR9 is extremely ergonomic. They did their homework. They have an interchangeable backstrap. The thin grip for many users will be very advantageous. They'll love it. All the controls are placed right where I need it. Nice trigger guard, good sights, and the grip itself is comfortable. So I think they did a great job on ergonomics. So very slight advantage Glock. That brings us to simplicity. Why is simplicity important? Because a simple gun is one that breaks less. It's one that's easier to take apart and put together. It's easier to accessorize. And it's generally lighter in weight because you have fewer parts. These are machines. Machines will break down. Guns are machines, and sometimes they just fail. That's just the way it is. But so the fewer parts we can put inside one of these here guns, the better off we'll be. Let's talk about takedown. It's really going to be hard for any gun to beat the Glock, in my opinion, is for takedown. Takedown is easy. And yes, both of these are striker-fired pistols. What do I mean by that? They do not have external hammers, as you can see, like the SIG designs, the Beretta design, the 92 design. I like striker-fired pistols. I don't feel at all, I'm kind of deviating, but I'll get to the simplicity here in a sec. I don't feel like I'm undergunned, so to speak, by a striker-fired pistol. A lot of internet rumors out there say, well, you're stupid if you carry a striker-fired pistol, man, because you don't have a second strike capability if you have a bad cartridge. Like I've spoken to in my other videos, these are generally people who don't have a lot of gun training. No offense. Because if you have a failure to fire, I guess you can waste time pulling the trigger. Not me. I'm going to do a tap, rack, and bang. Or tap, rack, evaluate, and see what's going on. In other words, I'm not going to try mess around with a faulty cartridge that's proven itself faulty. And it's a time waster. Because guess what? You just may not have any cartridge inside your chamber. And that's generally the case when you have a fail to fire. There's nothing in there. It's because a lot of people fail to seat their magazine. It's sitting in like that. And so when they rack the slide, man, have I seen this a lot. In my law enforcement stuff, I see it a lot. Maybe not with the Glock design. I see a lot with the H&K USP design. They rack it, think it's loaded. Guess what? Not loaded. Magazine wasn't fully seated. Seat the magazine, then jack around in. Now you're loaded. That's, again, why you need to go to the tap rack bang drill. If you do anything else, you're wasting time, and you could just very well get killed in that assessment. So, striker-fired pistols rock. They are not at any disadvantage at all. Hey, what do you know? I got to do a part 3. Here comes part 3. Nutnfancy, talking about the SR9 by Ruger.